The air in the gallery hummed with a particular kind of New York noise to the clink of champagne flutes against a soundtrack of curated jazz and the low, self-satisfied murmur of people who believed being seen was an art form in itself. Alone Sterling found it all vaguely amusing. I was leaning against a cool concrete column that half hidden by a monumental, and frankly overpriced, abstract sculpture that looked like a silver tornado had made passionate love to a pile of scrap metal. My simple emerald green silk dress was probably worth more than the piece I was standing next to that, a fact that would have horrified the artist and delighted my mother, had she been there. She wasn't. I preferred it that way. I was debating a stealthy exit when a voice cut through the ambient noise near my shoulder. It's compelling, isn't it? The raw confrontation of industrial decline against the aspiration of form. I turned. The man was handsome in a clean-cut, Brooks Brothers sort of way. Mid-30s, good suit that aimed for conservative luxury but missed by a few threads, hair expertly trimmed. His eyes were fixed on the metallic monstrosity, not on me, which was a point in his favor. Most men here looked at the art for 3 seconds, then spent the rest of the time scanning the room for more useful connections. Compelling is one word for it, I said, taking a sip of my champagne. I was leaning towards loud. He finally looked at me, a flash of surprise, followed by a quick, genuine smile. Not a fan of de Koon's later period? I'm a fan of art that doesn't require a safety briefing, I replied dryly. But don't let me ruin it for you. I'm just a bystander with a glass of decent view. Ethan, he said, extending a hand. Ethan Wright. And you're not just a bystander. You're the only person in here who looks like they'd rather be anywhere else. It's refreshing. I shook his hand. Eloan. And my desire to be in a bathtub with a good book, is that obvious? Only to the professionally observant, he said, his gaze sharp, assessing. I'm in finance. M.A. Reading people is part of the job. You don't have the predatory glaze of a collector or the desperate vibe of a wannabe. So, what's your story? Artist? I let out a soft laugh. God.no. Too much work. I'm an enthusiast, a professional appreciator of free wine and interesting conversations that have nothing to do with quarterly reports. A woman of leisure, he said, and I waited for the judgment, the subtle shift. It didn't come. Instead, he looked intrigued. Must be nice. It has its moments. And you? Shouldn't you be networking? I saw you earlier, talking to the gallery owner. Looked intense. A shadow passed over his face. So brief, I almost missed it. Trying to. It's a challenging ecosystem. Everyone's guarding their territory. I'm at Barclays. Vice President, for what that's worth. Trying to make the jump to the next level feels like running in quicksand in a $1,000 suit. He paused, seeming surprised at his own candor. Sorry, you probably don't want to hear about banking woes. I don't mind, I said, and found I meant it. There was an intensity to him, a driven focus that was different from the bored privilege that usually surrounded me. Quicksand sounds uncomfortable, especially in good suede shoes. He laughed, a real, unguarded sound that softened the careful lines of his face. Exactly. So, professional appreciator, what do you appreciate besides escape plans and champagne? We talked, or rather, he talked, and I listened, asking just enough questions to keep him going. He spoke about his upbringing in Connecticut, his father's early death, the pressure he felt to provide for his mother, Catherine, and his older sister, Olivia. He spoke of late nights, of deals that fell through at the last minute, of the constant, grinding need to prove himself. It was a world of stress and stakes that I had spent my life deliberately avoiding. My brothers, Lucas and William, thrived in that world. I found it suffocating. What about you? He asked finally. Yes, we drifted to a quieter corner near a series of melancholic watercolors. Family? Or is that too personal for a first interrogation at a pretentious art show? Not too personal, I said, choosing my words with the habitual, lazy care I always used. My family is in business. Various things. Energy.tech. Boring. Sprawling stuff. I'm the black sheep, or the lazy sheep. I prefer to admire the pastoral scene from a comfortable distance. They don't mind that you're not in the fray. I thought of my father, Richard Sterling, whose idea of relaxation was a hostile takeover done efficiently. Of Lucas, who had taken to running the Sterling global empire with a calm, ruthless competence that both impressed and terrified me. They've accepted that my contribution to the family legacy is not causing any scandals and spending my trust fund in aesthetically pleasing ways. I have two very capable brothers who handle the fray. They're happy I'm happy. He looked at me, really looked at as if trying to solve a puzzle. You're different. Most people I meet that their happiness is tied to the next promotion, to the next big score. Yours seems self-contained. It's a work in progress, I said, smiling, but I highly recommend it. Less heartburn. He asked for my number. I gave it to him. It felt interesting, not the calculated, social climbing overtures I was used to deflecting, but a genuine interest from a man who seemed to think he was the fascinating one. Our first date was a small, family-run Italian place in the West Village that all checkered tablecloths and candles stuck in candy bottles. It was a world away from the Michelin-starred establishments my family frequented. Ethan held my chair, laughed easily, and told terrible banker jokes. He didn't try to impress me with name drops or show off. He was just present, charming in an unpolished way. He talked about his dream of making managing director, of buying his mom a house in Greenwich, of building something solid. Security, he said, his hand covering mine on the table. It's not just about the money. It's about knowing you've built something no one can take away, that you've arrived. I squeezed his hand, a flicker of guilt passing through me. I'd never had to build security. It had been the very air I breathed since birth. But I pushed it away. This was real. He was real. The courtship was a whirlwind. He sent flowers to my apartment, not the obscenely large, perfect arrangements that were a staple of my childhood home, but cheerful, mixed bouquets from the corner bodega. He took me to indie movies and for walks in Central Park. He was attentive, almost awed by me, to be why my seemingly effortless knowledge of art whined at the hidden corners of the city. I never lied about my life. When he asked what I did all day, I said, whatever I feel like. I volunteer at the Met sometimes. I read. I have a very demanding yoga instructor. It was the truth. I just omitted the context that the volunteering was on the junior associates board, that my reading was done in a penthouse overlooking the park, that my yoga classes were private sessions in my own home studio. He met my family once, early on, for a brief, awkward lunch at the plaza. My father was polite but distant, why brother Lucas coolly assessing. Ethan was uncharacteristically nervous, misusing a fork. Afterwards, I end the cab. He was quiet. They're intense, he finally said. They're Sterlings, I said with a shrug. If that explained everything. In a way, it did. Don't worry about it. They liked you. Did they? He sounded doubtful. Lucas said you had a firm handshake. That's high praise. He relaxed, slightly, pulling me closer. Your life is so different from mine, Ellie. Good, I whispered, kissing his jaw. I like yours better. I met his mother and sister in their meticulously tidy house in Stamford. Catherine Wright was a small, bird-like woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She served iced tea in glasses with little floral patterns and asked polite, probing questions. So, Eloin, Ethan says you're not working at the moment? That's right. I'm taking some time to figure out my next move, I said, using my standard, non-committal line. How fortunate you can do that, Catherine said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. And your family? What do they do? Oh, various things. Investments, mostly. I took a sip of tea. This is delicious, Mrs. Right. Just call me Catherine, dear. Investments. How interesting. And they're supportive? Of your hiatus? Very. I said, meeting her gaze calmly. They just want me to be happy. Olivia, sharper edged and more openly curious than her mother, jumped in. The apartment Ethan says you have, near the park. That must be pricey, even for a hiatus. I got lucky with an inheritance from my grandmother, I said, smoothly. It wasn't entirely a lie. A very large part of my trust fund was from my maternal grandmother. Ethan, sensing tension, put an arm around me. Ellie's got a great eye for quality. Mom, you should see the place. It's like something out of a magazine. Later, driving back to the city, Ethan was effusive. They loved you. I could tell. I stared out the window at the passing lights. Your mother thinks I'm a gold digger with a trust fund. He laughed, squeezing my knee. Don't be silly. She's just protective. She doesn't understand our world. The city, the pace, it's different. She'll come around. I wanted to believe him. I did believe him, because I was falling for him, for his drive, for the way he made me feel seen, not as a sterling, but as a Lowen. He was a project, a life, I had chosen for myself, outside the gilded cage of my name. When he proposed 6 months later, on the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset, it was with a simple, perfect solitaire. He was sweating, his eyes bright with emotion. I don't have much yet, Ellie, but I'm going to give you the world. I promise. Tears sprung to my eyes, genuine ones. I don't want the world, Ethan. I just want you. We married in a small, beautiful ceremony at the Central Park boathouse. My family was there, a compact, powerful block of quiet elegance. His family was there, beaming, Catherine dabbing her eyes. I insisted on keeping it simple, intimate. My father, surprised, had offered the plaza, a ballroom at the Met. I refused. This was my life, my choice. As a wedding gift, why parents gave us the deed to a stunning, sun-drenched apartment on Fifth Avenue, facing the park. It was, I and their terms. Modest and cozy. To Ethan, it was a palace. He stood in the empty living room, the Manhattan skyline sprawling before him, and wept. I can't. Ellie, this is too much. I should be providing this for you. I wrapped my arms around him. Don't be silly. It's a gift. From my family to us. This is our home. Our start. He held me tight, his voice thick with emotion and determination. I'll deserve it. I swear to God that I'll work until I'm worthy of you and this. In those first years, he did. He was tender, present, grateful. He worked brutal hours, but always came home to me. Our life settled into a beautiful, privileged rhythm. I decorated the apartment with a casual, expensive ease that Catherine, on her visits, would comment on with a tight smile. Another new sofa, Lowen? Ethan's bonus must have been exceptional. I just smile and say, a lucky find at an estate sale. I use the dividends from my trust to the income from my portfolio, managed, unbeknownst to Ethan, by the same firm that handled Sterling Global's assets, to pay for the lion's share of our life. The extravagant grocery deliveries from Dean DeLuca, the weekly housekeeper and part-time chef at the summer rental in the Hamptons. Ethan's salary covered his suits, his car, and not much else. He was vaguely aware that I had money of my own, but he was so focused on his own ascent, so happy in our bubble, that he never pressed for details. I was just his Ellie, his beautiful, slightly eccentric wife, who made a home for him. Then, about 2 years in, he hit a wall. A major deal he'd been nursing for months fell apart at the 11th hour. A rival at the bank got the promotion he'd been counting on. He came home night after night, hollow-eyed, snapping at little things. The pressure in the apartment grew palpable. One night he sat at our kitchen island, the head in his hands. It's like I'm invisible, Ellie. No matter how hard I work, I'm stuck. Harrington doesn't even know my name. I'm just another VP in a sea of suits. My heart ached for him. I rubbed his shoulders. Something will break. I know it will. You don't know. He said, sharper than he meant to. Sorry. It's just this is the real world. It's brutal. You wouldn't understand. The words stung, but I pushed the hurt aside. He was in pain, and I could help. Not as a low-in wife, but as a low-in Sterling. The next day I had lunch with my brother Lucas at Lou Bernardine. Over halibut and a bottle of crisp Sancerre that I made it seem like a casual aside. Ethan's really struggling at Barclays, I said, swirling my wine. Some deal with a Midwestern manufacturing firm fell through. He's devastated. Thinks his career is dead-ended. Lucas, who had been listening with half an ear while checking something on his phone, looked up. His blue eyes, like mine, but infinitely more calculating, focused. Barclays? Harrington Shop? What's the manufacturing firm? Not Great Lakes Auto Parts? I blinked, feigning ignorance. I think that might have been the name. Why? A slow, faint smile touched my brother's lips. No reason, just a coincidence. Poor Ethan. Must be tough. He changed the subject to my mother's upcoming charity gala. I thought nothing more of it. A week later, Ethan burst through the apartment door, his face alight with a joy I hadn't seen in months. He swept me up in a hug, spinning me around. You are my lucky charm. You will not believe it. What? Ethan, what happened? Harrington. Jonathan Harrington himself called me into his office today. He said he'd heard through the grapevine that I'd done good work on the Great Lakes deal, even though it fell through. He said he admired my tenacity. He's personally assigning me to the Kensington Pharmaceuticals portfolio. Ellie, this is it. This is the break. Partner track, for sure. He was babbling, kissing me, laughing. I laughed with him, feeling a warm glow of satisfaction. See, I told you something would break. I'm so proud of you. That night, he slept exhausted and happy that I stared at the ceiling. I had done that. With a few careless words to my brother that I had shifted the tectonic plates of his career. He thought it was his talent, finally recognized. He thought it was luck. I told myself it was love. It was just helping the man I loved. He didn't need to know how. The Sterling name, our influence, IT was a part of me I was happy to forget. Ethan loved me, not my pedigree. This was just a nudge, a secret gift. Our life was perfect. The gilded cage I had built for myself, with him at the center, had never felt more like freedom. The Kensington Pharmaceuticals deal was Ethan's baptism by fire, and he emerged, in his own words, scorched but sanctified. The promotion to senior vice president came 6 months later, with a substantial bonus and a corner office with a sliver of a park view. The man who walked into our apartment the night of the announcement was not the same man who had wept on its empty floors years before. His shoulders were broader, his smile more assured, his suits now impeccably Seville, paid for with his own money. The gratitude that had once softened his edges was hardening into a polished, unshakable confidence. To us, he said, clinking his crystal tumbler of Macallan against my wine glass. And to the beginning, real beginning, I'm so happy for you, darling, I said, meaning it. The satisfaction of seeing him thrive was genuine, even if its roots were my secret. Harrington pulled me aside today, he said, pacing the length of our living room, the city lights twinkling behind him like a conquered galaxy, said my work on Kensington was textbook, that I have the instincts. The partnership track is clear now. Ellie, clear. That's wonderful, I said, setting down my glass. Did you want to go out to celebrate? I could call for a reservation at Lou. Not tonight, he said, waving a hand, already scrolling through emails on his phone. I've got a call with London in an hour. This is when the real work starts. Can't get complacent. The calls with London, Hong Kong, and Frankfurt became the soundtrack of our evenings. Our dinners, once long, talkative affairs, were now often quiet, with him typing on his phone or rehearsing pitches aloud. I filled the silence with stories from my day, a new exhibition at the Frick that a problematic hydrangea in the Hamptons garden, the charming novel I was reading. He'd nod that hum in acknowledgement that his eyes distant. That's nice, honey. He'd say that the phrase becoming a reflex. One night, that AS, I described a fascinating documentary on Venetian glass blowing. He looked up, did a faint line of irritation between his brows. You ever think about doing something more consequential with your time? I paused at a forkful of salmon halfway to my mouth. Consequential? You're so bright. You have great taste. Maybe interior design? Or starting a small gallery, something that gives you a profile. The other partners' wives, they all have things. Charities. Boutique businesses. It gives a good impression. A cold trickle started in my chest. I volunteer at the library and the Met. I know, he said, his tone placating. And that's sweet. It's a different league now. Perception matters. My perception. Or yours? I asked quietly. Ours. He said, firmly, reaching over to pat my hand. It's for us. Think about it. I did think about it. I thought about the six-figure donation I'd just anonymously made to that very library for their children's literacy program. I thought about the small gallery idea, which would require a multi-million-dollar investment to be taken seriously in this city, money I had that. But explaining its source would open doors I wanted kept shut. My idyllic, quiet life was beginning to feel like a liability. The first true fracture came at Barclay's annual Christmas gala at the Pierre. I wore a backless, navy velvet gown that had been my mother's. It was understated, but unmistakably couture. Ethan, resplendent in his tuxedo, beamed with proprietary pride as we entered, at his hand on the small of my back. For a few hours, IT felt like the old days. He introduced me to colleagues, his grip firm, his voice proud. My wife, Eloan. Then, during a lull near the bar, we found ourselves next to Jonathan Harrington, the firm's managing partner, and his wife. Eleanor, a formidable woman with a crown of silver hair and a reputation for ruthless social acuity. Ethan immediately stiffened, going into what I called his earnest protege mode. Sir, Mrs. Harrington, what a wonderful evening. May I introduce my wife, Eloan? Harrington's eyes, sharp as flint behind his glasses, passed over Ethan and settled on me. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face. He took my hand in both of his. Eloan Sterling. Well, this is a delightful surprise. I hadn't realized our Ethan had such a dark horse for a wife. He chuckled, ignoring Ethan's confused blink. How is your father? Still beating me at Pebble Beach? The world slowed. I could feel Ethan's gaze snap to me, hot and questioning. I kept my smile light, social. I believe he still claims a two-stroke advantage, Mr. Harrington. He's very well, thank you. Sends his regards. And that brother of yours? Lucas? A force of nature. The deal he orchestrated for Ethereum last quarter. Masterful. Just masterful. Harrington shook his head in admiration. You must tell him I'm in awe. And your mother? Still terrorizing the garden committee at the club? I laughed, the perfect, tinkling society laugh I'd learned as a girl. Relentlessly. The rhododendrons have never been more disciplined. Eleanor Harrington leaned in, kissing the air by my cheeks. Darling, you look radiant. That's a Varvatos, isn't it? I'd recognize that drape anywhere. You must give me the name of your tailor. We're leaving for Palm Beach after the New Year, and I'm in an utter sartorial crisis. We chatted for another 5 minutes about fabrics, Palm Beach gossip, and the Metropolitan Opera's new season. The Harringtons spoke to me as a peer, an insider. Ethan stood beside me, silent, a smiling statue. I could almost hear the frantic whirring of his mind. When the Harringtons moved on to greet another group, the silence between us was glacial. The band struck up a swing number. Sterling? Ethan's voice was low, taut. It's my maiden name. Ethan, I said, trying for lightness, taking a sip of champagne. You know what I mean. Harrington knows your father, Personally. He knows Lucas. He's in awe of Lucas. The last word was almost strangled. You said your family was in boring investments. They are. Sterling Global is an investment firm, among other things. I met his eyes at willing him to understand my desire for simplicity. My father has played golf with half the fortune, 500. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? He hissed the words, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. Jonathan Harrington just treated you like royalty. He barely acknowledged me. What the hell, Ellie? Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? I felt a defensive spark ignite. That my last name carries some weight in certain circles? Does it matter? He promoted you because of your work on Kensington, not because of me. But does he know? Ethan's eyes were desperate, searching mine. Does he know that I'm married to Richard Sterling's daughter? I finished the name, hanging in the air between us like a tangible thing. I have no idea. I've never discussed my marriage with Jonathan Harrington, and I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't make a scene. He stared at me, a tumult of emotions crossing his face. Betrayal, confusion, dawning anxiety. The unshakable confidence of an hour ago was gone, replaced by the vulnerability of a man who just realized the ground beneath him might not be of his own making. He took a long gulp of his scotch. We're talking about this at home, he said, finally, his voice flat. The car ride was silent. At home. He didn't wait for his coat to be off. Start from the beginning, Eloan, and don't leave anything out this time. I sat on the edge of our bed, suddenly tired. There's no grand conspiracy, Ethan. My family has money. A lot of it. My father founded Sterling Global. Lucas runs it now. I have 2 other brothers, William and James, who are also involved. I'm the youngest, the only girl. I never had the stomach for the business. They give me an allowance that I have a trust. I live my life. I fell in love with you. That's it. Sterling Global. He repeated, AS, if testing the weight of it. His face was pale. The private equity firm? The one that just took Ethereum private? That's Sterling Global? Yes. And the apartment? The Hamptons house? Gifts. From my parents. And my promotion? The Kensington deal? His voice was a whisper. I went to him, took his cold hands in mine. That was you, Ethan. All you. I never said a word to my family about your work. Not until... I hesitated. Until when? His grip tightened. Until that night you came home, so upset. Months ago, I had lunch with Lucas. I might have mentioned you were having a tough time, that a deal fell through. I never asked him to do anything. I just shared, as a sister might. It was a thin, necessary veil over the truth. He pulled his hands away, running them through his hair. So what? He felt sorry for me? Went and had a word with Harrington? A pity promotion? No. I said, sharper than intended. Ethan, listen to yourself. Do you really think Jonathan Harrington would risk a major portfolio on the word of a friend's little brother? He gave you that deal because someone... probably multiple someone's told him you were good. Lucas might have mentioned your name. That's all. He opened a door. You walked through it. You earned it. He paced the argument warring within him, visible on his face. The need to believe in his own merit versus the terrifying, deflating possibility of patronage. Finally, he stopped at his back to me. This changes everything, he said, his voice hollow. It changes nothing, I pleaded. I'm still me. You're still you. We're the same people we were this morning. He turned, and his eyes were not the eyes of the man I'd married. They were harder, more calculating. We're not, are we? All this time, the way we live. I thought I was building this for us, but it was already built. I was just decorating. That's not true. The tears came then, hot and sudden. Our life, what we have, it's ours. My money just oils the wheels. Your success is yours. Our love is ours. He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed, the fight draining out of him, replaced by a weary resignation. He came over and pulled me into a stiff hug. Okay, okay, Ellie, I'm sorry. It was just a shock. I just need to process. He processed it by burying himself deeper in his work. The questions didn't stop. They just became quieter to more insidious. They came from his mother, Catherine, and Olivia's visits, that once monthly, that became biweekly. They'd arrive, Catherine with a casserole or a thoughtful article she'd clipped about the value of work for the modern woman. Olivia with sharp-eyed assessments of my new furniture or art. One afternoon, as I arranged flowers from the farmer's market, Catherine watched from a kitchen stool. These are lovely, dear. So rustic. She sipped the expensive herbal tea I'd served. Ethan tells us you had quite the chat with Mr. Harrington at the party. It was just small talk, I said, trimming a stem. Small talk about your very important family. Olivia chimed in, scrolling through her phone. Sterling Global. I looked it up. Impressive. Why ever don't you use the name? I'd have it on a billboard. It's not my achievement, I said evenly. It's my father's and brother's. Modest. Catherine said, her tone implying something else entirely. But you know, dear, I end this world. A woman needs her own identity. Especially married to a man on the rise like our Ethan. People will talk. They'll say, he married. Well, they'll say he married for money. I snapped a thorny rose stem with more force than necessary. They'll say what they like. Ethan knows the truth. Does he? Catherine's voice was sweetly poisonous. He works so very hard, alone. All those late nights. The pressure he's under to provide this. She gestured vaguely at the sun-drenched, multi-million-dollar apartment. It must be a burden that knowing his wife's family could buy and sell his efforts before breakfast. It can emasculate man, make him question things. I put down the shears, my hands trembling. Is that what you're doing, Catherine? Making him question things. She smiled at a thin, pitying thing. I'm his mother. I worry. I just want what's best for him. A true partner. Someone who stands with him, not someone he stands in the shadow of. The poison took root. I saw it in the new, critical way Ethan would look at my shopping bags, even though I used my own accounts. I heard it in his sigh when I mentioned a charity board meeting. If it were a frivolous game. The sweet volunteer work became a hobby. My days reading were killing time. The confident man was being slowly replaced by a resentful one, that his pride a fragile shell around a growing kernel of insecurity that his mother and sister diligently watered. He started making comments. Maybe skip the personal chef this week, huh? Let's try to live on missillary for a bit. Or, the Hamptons is beautiful, but all my colleagues rent in Montauk now. It's more self-made. He began talking about our money as if my resources were a communal pot he was graciously allowing me to contribute to rather than the foundation of our lifestyle. One night, after a particularly tense dinner where I'd mentioned a friend's art opening, he exploded. Why is everything about galleries and openings and charity balls with you? He snapped, pushing his plate away. Don't you ever think about real things? Mortgage rates? Market volatility? The fact that I have a performance review next month that could make or break the next 5 years of our lives. Our lives are just fine. Ethan, I said, my voice cold. And if you're worried about the review, perhaps you should focus on that instead of criticizing how I spend my days. Your days, he scoffed. What do you actually do, Ellie? You buy things. You arrange flowers. You have lunch. My mother is right. It's not enough. Not for the wife of a man who's going to be a partner at Barclays. The word felt like a slap. The wife of a man. Is that all I am? A credential to be polished for your partnership? You could be so much more. He shouted, and it was the frustration, the gnawing sense of inferiority, finally boiling over. You're smart. You're connected, for God's sake. You could be on boards, you could be running a foundation, you could be someone. Instead, you're just Eloan, my beautiful, idle wife. The silence that followed was absolute. and terrible. I looked at the man I loved, and saw a stranger reflected in his eyes, a lazy, pampered ornament. The invisible hand that had gently pushed him up the mountain was now, I in his view, holding him down. I see, I said, why voice dangerously quiet. I stood, placing my napkin neatly on the table. Well, you have your review to prepare for. I wouldn't want to distract you with my idleness. I walked to our bedroom, but not before I heard him mutter, choked with a bitterness that was entirely new. Sterling fucking global. That night, I lay awake, the warmth of our bed a mockery. The gilded cage I'd built for love now felt like a trap. The lock, I realized with a sickening jolt that was on the inside. And the man I'd let in with me was trying to wrench the bars apart, not to free me, but to prove he could. The invisible hand that had caressed and supported was now being examined with suspicion and resentment. The balance had shifted, and I was no longer sure it could ever shift back. The distance between us solidified into a cold, polite routine. The argument about my idleness was never mentioned again, but it hung in the apartment like a bad smell we'd both decided to ignore. Ethan worked later. I volunteered more, took up pottery classes in Soho, did anything to fill the hours with activity that looked, on the surface, like a productive life. It was a performance, and we were both weary actors. His promotion to managing director came through 6 months later. The official notice arrived on a Friday. He called me, his voice crackling with a triumph that felt directed at me, a vindication. It's done, Ellie. Partner track is locked. The offer letter's in my inbox. We need to celebrate. Properly. A party. There was an edge to his voice, a challenge. See, IT seemed to say that I did this. Me. That's wonderful. Ethan, I said, forcing warmth into my tone. Of course. We should. At the Hamptons' house. Next Saturday. I'll handle the caterer. You just make sure the place looks good. The instruction was casual, dismissive. The subtext was clear. Do the one thing you're good for. I'll see to it. I replied, why voice flat. The party planning was a masterclass in my erasure. Catherine and Olivia descended upon the Hamptons' house like a decorating militia, armed with swatches and clipboard lists. My suggestions for a relaxed, outdoor clambake were overruled. Too casual a low-in, Olivia said, not looking up from her tablet. This is a statement. Ethan's colleagues, important clients. It needs sophistication. A seated dinner. White glove. I've already booked Le Soleil. Catherine announced, naming the most expensive, pretentious caterer in the East End. They did the Harringtons' anniversary. Ethan agreed it sends the right message. I hadn't been consulted. I stood in my own sunroom, feeling like a guest. And the guest list? I asked. Ethan's managing it. Catherine said, her smile thin. He knows who needs to be there. I later found a printed list on his desk. My family's names were absent. A few of my friends, the more socially prominent ones that were included. The rest were Barclays people clients and AET, the very bottom. Sophia Bennett +1. I didn't recognize the name. The night of the party, the house was transformed into a glossy magazine spread. Strands of fairy lights twinkled over a vast tent erected on the lawn. A jazz trio played softly. The air smelled of jasmine, sea salt, and money. I wore a simple white silk column dress, why only jewelry, a pair of diamond studs that had been my grandmother's. I wanted to feel like myself, not a decoration in their production. Ethan was in his element, wearing a new Brioni suit, laughing two loud, clapping backs. He looked right through me. I circulated, playing the hostess with a serene smile, why Sterling training kicking in on autopilot. I was chatting with Michael Point, one of Ethan's more bearable colleagues, when I saw her. She was young, late 20s, with a sleek, dark bob and the aggressive posture of someone who owned every room she entered. She wore a crimson dress that was all sharp angles and confidence. She was attached to the arm of a portly, older man but her eyes were laser-locked on Ethan, tracking him as he moved through the crowd. Ethan, catching her gaze, gave a small, private smile and a slight nod. The intimacy of it was a physical blow. "Who's that?" I asked Michael, keeping my tone light. "Oh, that's Sophia Bennett, Ethan's new wunderkind. Hired her from Goldman a few months back. Sharp as a tack. Ruthless. She's been a huge help on the Mercer account, from what I hear." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Rumor is her uncle is old man Mercer himself. Ethan landed the account right after she came on board. Lucky break, ha? Lucky break." The words echoed in the hollow pit of my stomach. I watched as Sophia disentangled herself from her date and glided towards Ethan. They didn't touch, but the space between them crackled with a proprietary energy. He leaned down to hear her over the music, his hand briefly, casually, resting on the small of her back to guide her through the crowd, a gesture that had once been mine. Dinner was a blur of forced smiles and inane conversation. I was seated at the opposite end of the long table from Ethan. He was flanked by senior partners and T.O. his right, Sophia Bennett. Her laughter, a high, bright sound punctuated the air repeatedly. I watched her touch his arm to emphasize a point her fingers lingering. He didn't move away. Catherine, seated to my left, held court. She was flushed with wine and vicarious triumph. "And of course, we're just so proud," she was saying to Mrs. Driscoll, the wife of a managing director. "Ethan has worked so hard. No handouts. No family connections to smooth the way. It's pure grit. Don't you agree, Aloan? You've seen the late nights firsthand." All eyes at our end of the table turned to me. Mrs. Driscoll, a kind-faced woman, gave me a sympathetic look. "I have, I said, my voice clear. He's very dedicated." Dedicated, Catherine repeated, savoring the word. "That's the word. It's a quality. I think that comes from having to make your own way in the world. From knowing the value of a dollar earned, not given." She took a delicate sip of wine. "Some people born with so much they never quite develop that drive they. They're content to be decorative, a beautiful accessory. But for a man on the rise, a real partner needs to be more than a pretty vase on a shelf. She needs to be an asset. Don't you think, Margaret?" The table fell silent. Margaret Driscoll looked acutely uncomfortable. My face felt hot, but I kept the smile plastered on. I caught Ethan's eye down the table. He had heard. He paused in his conversation with Sophia, his eyes meeting mine. For a second, I saw a flicker, of shame, of irritation that I couldn't tell. Then, he gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of his head. A clear command. Don't make a scene. Let it go." He turned back to Sophia and laughed at something she said. The sound of that laugh, following that look of dismissal, shattered something inside me. The facade I'd spent years maintaining, the patient wife, the unassuming heiress. IT cracked. I felt a cold, clear calm wash over the humiliation. I excused myself and walked to the BAR.M, heels silent on the grass. The ride home was conducted in Arctic silence. He drove, his jaw clenched. I stared out the window at the dark, sleeping Hampton's lanes. "Well, that was a success," he finally said, his tone brittle. Harrington was impressed. "Mercer is practically signed. Your mother was in rare form," I said. My voice devoid of emotion. He sighed, the sound heavy with exasperation. "Ellie, come on. She's from a different generation. She doesn't mean anything by it. She's just proud. She called me a decorative vase, an accessory, in front of your colleagues' wives. And you proved her point by sulking about it." He snapped, slapping the steering wheel. "What were you going to do? Get into a catfight with my mother at my promotion party? For God's sake, grow a thicker skin. This is the big leagues. People talk. You smile and move on. Is that what you do with Sophia Bennett? The question left my lips before I could stop it. Cold and sharp. The car swerved slightly. What did you say? Sophia, you're wunderkind. You smile and move on when she hangs on your every word. When she touches you like she has a right to. His grip tightened on the wheel. You're being paranoid and jealous. She's a colleague, a valuable one. Her uncle is Benjamin Mercer. That account is worth billions. You have no idea the pressure I'm under to the politics. I need her. You need her. I repeated, the words tasting like ash. Yes, professionally. Jesus, Eloin. I guess it's so impossible to believe a woman might find me interesting for my mind, for my work, and not just for my circumstances. The last word was loaded. An accusation. Your circumstances. I breathed at the irony so thick it choked me. You mean the life I've financed? The connections you've unknowingly ridden on? There it is. He hissed, pulling into our driveway with a jerk. The great Eloin Sterling, finally throwing her money in my face. I knew it was only a matter of time. You've been holding that over me since the Harringtons, haven't you? Waiting for the right moment to remind me I'll never be good enough, that I'll always be the scholarship boy in the room. He killed the engine, and the sudden silence was deafening. We sat in the dark. I have never thought that, I said, each word precise. But you do, don't you? You look at me and you see a constant reminder that you might not have done it all yourself. And you hate me for it. I don't hate you, he said, but the words were empty. I need you to be more. To be a partner, not a passenger. Sophia gets it. She's in the trenches. She fights. What do you do, Ellie? What do you actually dope-side, spend money and get your feelings hurt? It was the final, brutal lash. I had no more words. I got out of the car and walked into the house, up to the guest bedroom. He didn't follow. The detective's name was Roland Vance. He came recommended by my brother Lucas's security chief, a man named Davies, with the assurance of discretion and thoroughness. I met Vance in a bland, midtown coffee shop 2 days after the party. He was in his 50s, with the weary, observant eyes of a former cop. What do you need, Mrs. Right? He asked, his voice low. I need to know if my husband is having an affair, I said. Why voice surprisingly steady. I handed him a folded note with Ethan's name, his office address, a description, and a license plate number. And with whom? Vance took the note, his expression neutral. Duration? I'm not sure. A few months, perhaps. His behavior has changed. Late nights. New preoccupations. Any specific concerns? Phone, records, credit card statements you've seen? His phone has a new passcode. He's never had one before. And there's a colleague, Sophia Bennett. I'd like to know the nature of their relationship. Vance nodded, making a note. Standard procedure will be surveillance, financial trail, digital footprint where possible. I'll be in touch. Quickly, please, Mr. Vance. Understood. The wait was its own kind of torture. Ethan moved through the apartment like a ghost, alternating between cold silence and bursts of forced, jovial normality that were worse. He started using a new cologne, something sharp and woody. I found a receipt in the wash for a custom shirt fitting I knew nothing about. He took calls in his study with the door locked, his voice a low murmur. A week after I hired Vance, I was in the kitchen when Ethan's phone, left charging on the counter, buzzed. A text notification flashed on the screen. The preview read, "Can't wait for tonight. 8, usual PL." The screen went dark. My heart was a hammer against my ribs. Usual place. He walked in, smelling of soap and that new cologne. "Have you seen your phone is there, I said, pointing with a spoon I was using to stir my tea. My hand was perfectly steady. Thanks. He grabbed it, his thumb flying over the screen, a faint, private smile on his lips as he read. The smile he hadn't given me in months. Big day? I asked, why tone idle? Yeah. Client dinner. Might run late. Don't wait up. He didn't look at me. He was already typing a reply. Vance's report arrived as a password-protected PDF a day later. I waited until Ethan left for work, then opened it on my laptop at the kitchen island, the morning sun feeling obscenely cheerful. It was clinical, detailed, and utterly damning. Subject EW has been engaged in an intimate relationship with subject SB, Sophia Bennett, colleague, for approximately 14 weeks. There were time-stamped photos. Ethan and Sophia entering a discreet boutique hotel in the West Village, leaving 3 hours later, her hair slightly disheveled, having intimate dinners at out-of-the-way restaurants in Brooklyn that their bodies leaned close across the table. One photo showed them kissing in a shadowy corner of a parking garage that his hand tangled in her sleek, dark hair. Financial records indicate repeated charges at said hotel, the Lowell, as well as purchases from Bergdorf Goodman, lingerie size 2, and a jeweler, Cartier .1 pair of diamond stud earrings, charged to a credit card under EW's name that not associated with joint marital accounts. The diamond studs, a cheaper, gaudier version of the ones in my ears. Digital reconnaissance by a keylogger installed on EW's work laptop during a service call. Recovered the following email fragment sent from SB to EW last Tuesday. Told Uncle Ben you're the only one who truly understands the deal structure. He's listening. This is it, Ethan. Your ticket and mine. Can't wait to celebrate properly tonight. Destroy this. Audio surveillance directional microphone captured the following conversation between EW and CW, Catherine Wright, mother, at CW's residence on date. CW, just a matter of time. Ethan, she's a millstone, a pretty, empty-headed millstone with a trust fund. What does she bring you? Sophia understands your world. She has the connections, the drive. She's an asset. EW, inaudible mumble. CW, don't be sentimental. The prenup is generous. Too generous that if you ask me. But even with it, you'll be set. Especially once the Mercer deal closes with Sophia's help. You'll be free. You can have a real partner, a real life. Not this gilded cage she's built for you. EW, I know, Mom. I know. It's just complicated. The apartment, the house, it's in her name. And her family. CW, uffed. What will they do? They've ignored her for years, let her play house. They won't make a fuss. It'll be a quiet, expensive divorce, and then you move on. This is about your future, Ethan. Your legacy. Don't let guilt over a vapid socialite ruin it. I read the transcript twice. The coldness of it, the calculation, that was more shocking than the photos of the kisses. My mother-in-law, calmly plotting my disposal. My husband, not denying it, just worrying about the real estate. I closed the laptop. The world outside the window continued, unchanged. But inside, something had settled. A terrible, final clarity. The love I had felt was gone, leaving behind a clear, empty space where only facts remained. He was unfaithful. He was contemptuous. He and his family saw me as an obstacle to be removed, a bank account to be drained on the way out. I didn't cry. I felt a strange, detached calm. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in weeks. My brother Lucas answered on the second ring. To what do I owe the pleasure? You never call during market hours. I need to see you, I said, and my voice sounding foreign to my own ears, flat and dead. And Dad, today. The smile left his voice instantly. Where are you? Home. We'll be there in an hour. I made a pot of coffee. I showered. I dressed in a simple cashmere sweater and jeans. I was ready when my father and brother arrived. Their faces, so similar in their sharp, concerned intensity, looked at me, and I saw the moment they understood something was very wrong. Ethan, I said, before they could sit. He's having an affair with a colleague. It's been going on for months. His mother is encouraging it. They're discussing divorce. They see me as a financial and social impediment. The words fell into the sunlit room like stones. My father, Richard Sterling, went very still, that his face hardening into the mask he used for boardroom adversaries. Lucas's eyes turned to chips of ice. Tell us everything, Lucas said, that his voice dangerously soft. And I did. I showed them Vance's report. I told them about the party, that the comments, that the slow erosion of respect, the secret credit card, the new cologne, the locked door, the gilded cage his mother believed I had built for him. When I finished at why father stood and walked to the window, that his back to us. He was silent for a full minute. I never liked him, that, he said, finally, the words quiet but carrying the weight of a gavel. But you loved him, so we accepted him. We helped him. We stopped helping, that I said. Months ago, after the party, I asked you to. Lucas nodded, that a grim satisfaction on his face. And his precious Mercer deal, the one his girlfriend is supposedly delivering, it's stalled, has been for weeks. Internal review on their side. Nothing to do with us, of course. Just bad luck. I looked at my brother, understanding dawning. And his partnership, the one he just got, is still just a partnership track, Lucas said smoothly. The final committee review is in 3 months. Jonathan Harrington chairs that committee. He's an old friend. He was disappointed to hear about certain lapses in judgment. From a family man, the message was clear. The invisible hand that had once pushed could also crush. It just hadn't yet. What do you want to do, Ellie? My father asked, turning to face me. His gaze was direct. We can make him disappear. By the end of the week. Professionally, socially, financially, he'll be selling insurance in Omaha before he knows what hit him. The old Aloan, that the one who avoided conflict, who just wanted a quiet life, that would have said yes. Get it over with. Clean. Quiet. But that woman was gone. She had died in a Hamptons tent, listening to her husband laugh with his mistress. No, I said, and my voice was new. It was steady, cold, and carried the faint, unyielding echo of my family's own steel. Not yet. He's planning a party. A big one. To celebrate the Mercer deal he thinks is in the bag, and his impending partnership. He wants to have it here, at the Hamptons house. A slow, deadly smile spread across Lucas's face. He understood first. You want to give him his party. I want to give him the party of his life. I corrected, why eyes dry and clear. I want him to have everything he ever wanted, right there in his hands. And then I want to show him exactly who provided the stage, the props, and the script. I want him to understand the price of the gilded cage. Just before the door slams shut on his fingers. My father looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something other than indulgent affection in his eyes. I saw respect. What do you need from us? I took a deep breath. The plan, cold and perfect, was already forming. First, I need the best divorce lawyer in the city. Not to file, not yet. Just to be ready. Second, Lucas, I need you to make sure the Mercer deal doesn't just stall. I need it to dangle, like the juiciest carrot imaginable, right until that party. And third, I said, looking at both of them, I need an invitation list. Our invitation list for Ethan's celebration. The days after my father and brother left the Fifth Avenue apartment took on the eerie, focused quality of preparing for a siege. I was the commander of a silent army of one, and my arsenal was composed of paper, patience, and a profound, ice-cold rage that had settled in my bones, replacing the shattered remnants of my heart. My first move was to call Roland Vance, the detective. I met him at the same nondescript Midtown coffee shop. I need more, I told him, sliding a fresh burner phone across the table. Specifically, on Sophia Bennett. Everything. Her financials, her family connections, her history with Barclays, any past relationships with superiors. And I need ongoing surveillance on Ethan. Discreet, but constant. I want to know his every move, every meeting, every fluctuation in his mood. Vance raised a bushy eyebrow. That's a significant escalation at Mrs. Right. An expense. The expense is irrelevant. I want a daily digest. And I want you on standby for the night of Saturday, the 14th, at the Hamptons property. You and one other operative, purely observational, with high quality recording equipment. I want a record of everything that happens that night. A flicker of understanding crossed his face. He'd seen the photos that read the transcripts. He knew what this was. Understood. The Bennett dossier will be ready in 48 hours. The surveillance will start today. Good. And M.R. Vance? I said, standing to leave. The highest level of discretion. If my husband so much as suspects a tale that our arrangement is over. He won't, Vance said with the quiet confidence of a man who'd been invisible for 30 years. Next, I visited the offices of Thorne. Prescott locked at a law firm so discreet and so vicious they were known in certain circles as the Velvet Guillotine. My contact was Marcus Locke himself, a man in his 60s with the gentle demeanor of a favorite uncle and the strategic mind of a grandmaster. Lucas had arranged the introduction. Mrs. Wright, he said, gesturing to a plush chair in his wood-paneled office overlooking Central Park. Lucas explained the situation. My condolences on a profoundly predictable but nonetheless painful turn of events. Thank you, Mr. Locke. I assume you've reviewed the documents my brother provided? The prenuptial agreement, your personal asset, portfolios, the titles to the properties in question, and the preliminary findings from Mr. Vance. He steepled his fingers. The prenup, as you know, is generous. It guarantees Mr. Wright a settlement of $5 million. The Park Avenue Co-op you jointly purchased as an investment, and spousal support for 3 years, contingent on the marriage lasting over 5 years, which it has. I helped draft that prenup when I thought he loved me, I said, my voice flat. I was naive. Indeed. However, Locke continued, a sly smile touching his lips. The prenup also contains a standard morality clause. Infidelity, if proven, invalidates the spousal support and allows for a renegotiation of the settlement downward, significantly. The burden of proof, of course, I on you. I slid a copy of Vance's initial report across the polished desk. Will this suffice? Locke skimmed the pages, his expression unchanging. Hotels, credit card charges, intimate dinners. It's a good start. Conclusive for our purposes? Possibly. Devastating in the court of public opinion? Absolutely. But for maximum effect, and to ensure the clause is triggered without a protracted legal battle, we want irrefutable proof, a pattern, witnesses. The more, the merrier. The party on the 14th, I said. He's bringing her, as his guest, in my home, in front of what he believes will be his professional peers and future. Locke's eyes gleamed. How poetic, and how convenient. We'll have operatives there, discreetly, to observe and document the interaction. The cohabitation of paramours at the marital home, funded by marital assets. In a social setting. Yes, that will do nicely. He made a note. Now, the properties, the Fifth Avenue apartment and the Hamptons house are in your name alone. Purchased with funds from your irrevocable trust prior to the marriage. They are unequivocally yours. The investment co-op is jointly held. We'll push for a buyout of his share at the depressed 2024 valuation, not the current market value. Given the circumstances, he'll likely take it to avoid discovery. I want him to have nothing that came from me or my family. I said, the coldness in my voice surprising even me. Not a painting, not a piece of silverware. A sentiment I can weaponize. Locke nodded. We'll file for divorce on the Monday following the party, citing adultery, emotional cruelty, and constructive abandonment. We'll seek full enforcement of the morality clause. We'll also file a temporary restraining order freezing all joint accounts and barring him from the properties. He'll be served at his office, a very public, That very humiliating start to his week. A shiver of grim satisfaction went through me. Perfect. One final question, Mrs. Right? Locke said to his eyes sharp. What is your end game? Financial evisceration? Professional ruin? Both? I thought of Ethan's dismissive smile, that of Catherine's sneering decorative vase, of Sophia's possessive hand on his arm. I want him to understand that I said slowly exactly what he had, and I want him to watch it all disappear, piece by piece, just as he feels he's finally grasped it. The party is the opening act. Marcus Locke smiled at a real, unguileful smile. My dear Mrs. Wright, it will be an honor. Back at the apartment, I began to play my part. The wounded, chastened wife. I stopped volunteering. I let the housekeeper go, claiming we needed to tighten our belts, a notion that made Ethan scoff with a new sense of superiority. I cooked simple meals, which he often missed. I dressed in older, softer clothes. I made myself smaller, quieter, a ghost in the home I had created. Ethan, buoyed by the illusion of his impending triumph and the adoration of Sophia, interpreted my withdrawal as surrender. He became almost magnanimous in his condescension. One evening, I was listlessly folding laundry, a chore I hadn't done since college. He sat across from me, swirling a bourbon. You know, Ellie, he began. I end the tone of one bestowing wisdom. This is good for you. This simplicity. Getting in touch with the practical side of life. It's grounding. I kept my eyes on a pillowcase. Is it? Absolutely. All that charity nonsense, the endless lunches, it was a fantasy. This is real. When the Mercer deal closes and the partnership is finalized, things will be different. We'll be a team again. A real team. You'll see. I wanted to ask what kind of team included a mistress, but I just nodded. I'm trying, Ethan. He reached over, patting my hand. It felt like being touched by a reptile. I know you are, honey. It's a process. The Bennett dossier from Vance was a masterpiece of mundane damning. Sophia Bennett Point, 29. Dartmouth undergrad, Wharton MBA. Father, a mid-level executive at a pharmaceutical firm. Mother, a homemaker. Uncle, Benjamin Mercer, was the golden ticket to the founder and majority shareholder of Mercer Biotech. Sophia was ambitious, clever, and had a history of mentor-mentee relationships with powerful older men at Goldman Sachs, though nothing provably actionable. She saw Ethan not just as a lover, Vance surmised, but as her vehicle to a partner track at Barclays. Theirs was a partnership of mutual ambition, lubricated by sex. The most interesting detail was a whisper from a source at Barclays. The Mercer deal was not the sure thing Ethan believed. The board was getting cold feet, spooked by regulatory shifts. Sophia was pressuring her uncle, but the old man was wary. The deal was on life support. I shared this with Lucas over a secure video call. His face was a mask of satisfaction. The board is getting cold feet because I had a quiet word with an old friend at the FDA, he said. Suggested a routine audit of the specific class of drugs Mercer's new flagship product belongs to. Just a bureaucratic hiccup, of course. Nothing to do with Sterling Global, but enough to make any board nervous. Can you keep it hiccuping until the 14th? I asked. I can have it in full-blown cardiac arrest until the 15th if you want to, he replied. Harrington is getting antsy. He's put the partnership review on a watch, status, citing potential client instability. Your husband is too busy playing house with his new analyst to feel the ground shifting under his feet. Good, I said. Let him float. Now the guest list. For our side of the party. Lucas smiled. It's being handled. Jonathan and Eleanor Harrington have accepted. So have the Mercers, Benjamin and his wife. I explained it was a surprise for you, a show of support from your family for Ethan's big night. They were charmed. A few other key board members from Barclays. The Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, I know from the club. Enough heavy hitters to make it clear this isn't just a corporate barbecue. It's a sterling event. Mother and father will of course be there. The thought of my parents especially my mother witnessing the spectacle was both terrifying and fortifying. And they're prepared? Mother is already planning her hat, Lucas deadpanned. Father is reviewing Vance's file as if it's a hostile takeover bid. He's invested. The party planning became a surreal farce. Catherine and Olivia took over completely. As I knew they would. I was relegated to a glorified secretary, taking notes on their increasingly grandiose and tacky ideas. We're thinking ice sculptures, Olivia announced one afternoon in the Hamptons, scrolling through her iPad. A galloping stallion for the upward mobility theme. And a champagne tower, Catherine added. 4 feet tall. Very impressive. Lou Solialis doing a tasting menu with gold leaf on the scallops. Sounds lavished, I murmured, making a note on my own pad where I was secretly tracking the astronomical costs they were running up on Ethan's corporate account. Ethan deserves lavish, Catherine sniffed. After all he's accomplished on his own. She looked at me, her eyes sharp. You'll need a new dress. Eloan. Something that doesn't look so resigned. Perhaps with a bit of color. You've been so washed out lately. I was thinking of wearing an old one, I said softly. Something familiar. Nonsense, Olivia cut in. This is a statement. For all of us. I'll take you shopping. We'll get you something appropriate. I let them believe they had one. I attended the dress fitting, letting Olivia pick a garish, beaded Roberto Cavalli number that was 2 years too young for me and 3 sizes too flashy. I thanked her meekly. See, Mother? Olivia said, standing back as I stood on the pedestal, a sacrificial lamb in sequins. A whole new woman. Catherine's smile was thin. Quite. The final confrontation before the party happened the Tuesday prior. Ethan came home early, for once, his face grim. The Mercer deal's hiccups were clearly becoming known. Everything all right? I asked, feigning concern as I set the table for one. Fine. He snapped, pouring himself 3 fingers of whiskey. Just typical corporate inertia. Mercer's board is dragging their feet. Old men who are scared of their own shadows. I'm sure it will work out, I said in my placid, vacant voice. You're brilliant at what you do. He glared at me. If my agreement was an insult. You have no idea, Ellie. No idea the pressure. Sophia is working around the clock on this. She's a shark. If it weren't for her. He trailed off, but the implication hung in the air. If it weren't for her, I'd be lost. I'm glad you have such a dedicated colleague, I said, turning to stir a pot on the stove. He slammed his glass down. You could at least try to sound like you mean that. This is my career. Our future. I turned slowly, letting the mask slip for just a second, allowing the cold, sharp woman beneath to look out through my eyes. I am well aware of what's at stake, Ethan. For everyone. He blinked, unsettled by my tone. The meek, defeated Ellie he'd been living with was gone, replaced for a fleeting second by someone else. Someone he didn't recognize. Then I lowered my gaze, stirring the pot again. Dinner will be ready soon. It's just pasta. He stared at my back for a long moment, then muttered. I'm not hungry. I'm going back to the office. Sophia and I have numbers to run. Give her my regards, I said softly to the bubbling pot. He left without another word. The night before the party, I sat alone in the darkened living room of the Hamptons house. The silence was profound. Outside, the caterers had set up the tent, a giant white structure that looked like a tomb in the moonlight. In my hand, I held the simple white silk dress I'd worn to the Barclays Gala a lifetime ago. Not the gaudy one Olivia had chosen. This one. My armor. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. Lucas. All set on this end. The guests are confirmed. Harrington is intrigued. Mother has chosen a hat that could be classified as a weapon. Father says break a leg. Me. Thank you. Lucas. Are you ready? I looked out at the white tent. the stage that was being built for my husband's triumph. I thought of the ice sculpture of the stallion destined to melt into a puddle. I thought of the champagne tower waiting to be toppled. Me. I was born ready. I put the phone down. I felt no fear and no anxiety and no sorrow. Only a clear crystalline certainty. The performance of my life was about to begin. And for the first time I knew my lines by heart. The atmosphere in our Fifth Avenue apartment in the week leading up to the party was a toxic cocktail of manic anticipation and cold silent warfare. Ethan existed in a state of perpetual buzzing agitation. The Mercer deal was stuck in what he called final due diligence, the limbo that made him pace and snap. But his belief in its inevitability and in Sophia's ability to deliver it remained unshaken, a faith he clung to like a life raft. His impending partnership review was another ghost at the feast, a formality he spoke of with forced bravado. It's a done deal, he declared to me one evening, more to convince himself than me. As he stood at the window, his silhouette tense against the city lights. Harrington as much as told me, the party is just the victory lap. I was curled on the sofa, a book open but unread on my lap. I'd taken to wearing my oldest, softest cashmere, a uniform of non-threatening comfort. I'm sure you're right, I said. Why voice a neutral hum? The planning is coming along. Your mother and Olivia have been tireless. He turned a flicker of something, guilt, irritation, crossing his face. They just want it to be perfect. It's important. This isn't just a party, Ellie. It's a coronation. He said the word with a kind of hungry reverence. Everyone who matters will be there. I need you to be on. I repeated, letting just a hint of the old, wounded Ellie into my tone. You know what I mean, he said, impatient. Engaged. Charming. The wife I fell in love with. Not this. He gestured vaguely at my cocoon form. This version of you. Smile. Talk to people. For God's sake, maybe even get a facial. Olivia mentioned you're still planning to wear that old white dress. It's comfortable. And it's not old, it's classic, I said softly, looking down at my book. He made a sound of disgust. Classic is a polite word for boring. Sophia is wearing McQueen. She understands the assignment. The name slipped out, followed by a beat of too long silence. He covered it clumsily. She mentioned it. In passing. As a colleague. I let the silence stretch, allowing his discomfort to breathe before I looked up with a deliberately blank expression. I'm sure she'll look very professional. He stared at me, trying to decipher if the barb was intentional. Finding only passivity, he shrugged. Just tread out okay? For me, this is my night. Your night. The words were a drumbeat in the coming storm. Of course, Ethan. For you. The planning sessions at the Hamptons' house were exercises in surreal domination. Catherine and Olivia had set up a veritable war room in the sunroom, laptops and fabric swatches and catering binders spread everywhere. I was allowed to fetch coffee and take notes. The guest list is finalized, Olivia announced, tapping her screen. 120, mostly Barclays, the Mercer team, a few of our family friends from Connecticut. A good, solid, professional crowd. No one extraneous, Catherine added, her eyes sliding to me. We've kept it tight. Elite. This was my opening. I looked up from my notepad, adopting a hesitant, almost apologetic expression. I was thinking, since it's such an important night for Ethan, shouldn't we try to make it truly exceptional? If it's a coronation, A.S., he says. Catherine's lips thinned. What are you suggesting, Eloan? Fire eaters? A mariachi band? No, I said, waving a hand dismissively. Just more influential guests. The kind that would make a real statement. I know Ethan has been trying to get closer to Mr. Harrington. What if Mr. and Mrs. Harrington came? Olivia snorted. Jonathan Harrington doesn't go to junior executives' house parties. Eloan, even promoted ones. I know that I pressed why voice meek, but persistent. But what if it wasn't just Ethan's party? What if it was seen as more of a sterling event? My family's presence could elevate it. For Ethan's sake, I sold the lie with wide, earnest eyes. I know we've had our differences, but I want to support him. This is the one thing I can do. Use my name, just for one night. The silence was profound. Catherine and Olivia exchanged a long, loaded look. I could see the calculation whirring behind Catherine's eyes. The allure of real high society was a siren song she couldn't resist, even if it came from me. The chance to rub shoulders with the Harringtons. Tio have the sterling name, legitimizing her son's triumph. IT was too potent a cocktail. Your family? Catherine said, slowly testing the words. Your father? Mother? And Lucas, I nodded. They've always liked Ethan. They'd come if I asked. For me. And they know the Harringtons. Socially, of course. And well, the Mercers too. Benjamin Mercer and my father have served on a charity board together for years. If the Mercers were there, as guests of our family, IT might smooth any last-minute wrinkles with the deal. Show unity. I laid the bait with surgical precision. Olivia's skepticism was warring with naked ambition. You could really get them to come? The Harringtons? The Mercers? I can ask that, I said with a humble shrug. The worst they can say is no. But for Ethan, I think it's worth a try. Don't you? Catherine made the decision. Do it, she said, her voice sharp, but discreetly a low-in. We don't want it to look like we're begging. Frame it as an intimate, family and close friends celebration of his achievement. From you. Of course, I said, lowering my eyes to hide the cold triumph in them. From me. I called Lucas as soon as I was alone, walking on the beach, the wind whipping my words away. It's done. They took the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. They want you to make it an intimate, family celebration. Lucas's chuckle was darkly satisfying. Intimate. With the Harringtons, the Mercers, the Vanderbilts, and half the Barclays board? I've already spoken to them. They're all coming. Jonathan Harrington was particularly amused. He said, and I quote, I wouldn't miss this for the world. He's heard whispers about Ethan and the Bennett girl. He's old school. Doesn't like it. Good, I said. What about the Mercer deal? Benjamin Mercer is a pragmatist. He's coming as a courtesy to father and to see the lay of the land. The deal is functionally dead, Ellie. The FDA inquiry, I nudged, has spooked his board. They're voting to withdraw next week. He knows it. Sophia doesn't. And your husband certainly doesn't. I watched a gull dive into the gray waves. Keep it that way. Until Saturday night. The sword of Damocles dangles by a thread, Lucas murmured. I'll be there with scissors. The following days were a blur of final, frantic preparations overseen by Catherine with dictatorial fervor. I was a ghost, silently observing, confirming details with Lucas via encrypted messages. The menu was finalized. An obscenely expensive, fussy 9-course tasting menu. The 4-foot champagne tower was confirmed. The galloping stallion ice sculpture was a go. The cost charged to Ethan's departmental client development budget was eye-watering. I made sure a copy of all invoices was forwarded to a secure digital folder labeled Exhibit A. Sophia's presence became more overt. She started calling the house, asking for Ethan, her voice on the speakerphone a cool, confident purr. Just confirming the final head count for the Mercer team, Ethan. And darling, should I wear the black Valentino or the red McQueen? The red makes more of a statement, but the black is so boardroom. I was in the kitchen, pouring tea. Ethan, flushed, laughed, where the statement, Sophia, this is our night. Our night, I didn't flinch. I just stirred my tea, the spoon making no sound against the porcelain. 2 nights before the party, the storm gathered in our living room. Ethan had invited his mother and sister over for a final briefing. Sophia was there, too, a sleek panther in a designer knit dress, seamlessly integrated into the family tableau. She sat on the arm of Ethan's chair, her posture claiming him. I served them drinks, that the invisible help. The RSVPs are locked, Olivia said that glowing. It's a full house. Even the Harringtons have confirmed. Ethan, that this is huge. Ethan looked stunned, then ecstatic. The Harringtons? How? All eyes turned to me. I was refilling Catherine's wine glass. I asked them that, I said simply, as a favor, for you. Ethan's face cycled through surprise, suspicion, and finally, a grateful, condescending delight. Well, thank you, Ellie. That's something. He turned to Sophia, squeezing her hand. You hear that? Harrington will be there. This is it. Sophia's smile was brilliant, possessive. I told you, everything is falling into place. Her gaze flicked to me, standing there with a wine bottle, and there was a glint of pure, undisguised contempt. She saw the wife, the doormat, the soon-to-be ex, and she saw no threat. Only furniture. Catherine raised her glass. To my son, who is about to get everything he deserves. Her eyes, she drank, were on Sophia, not me. The succession plan was clear. Later, after they'd left, Ethan was buzzing with a nervous, grandiose energy. He poured 2 fingers of whiskey, not offering me any. You see, Ellie? He said, pacing. This is what momentum feels like. Harrington, Mercer, Sophia, it's all converging. This party, it's not the end. It's the launch pad. I sat quietly, watching him. You must be very proud of everything you've built. He stopped, mistaking my calm for awe. I am, and it's only the beginning. With Sophia by my side, her connections, her drive, there's no limit. He was too exhilarated, too close to his dreamed of pinnacle. Even pretend anymore. She seems very capable, I offered. She's a force of nature, he said, and there was a reverence in his voice that had once been mine. Not like some people who are content to just exist, to be a passive beneficiary of life. He looked at me then, and the last vestiges of the man I'd married were gone, burned away by ambition and infatuation. Saturday night, Ellie, I want you to try to be someone she might respect. For my sake, the night before the party, we drove out to the Hamptons in silence. The house was a hive of activity, caterers, florists, rental company staff. The giant tent glowed from within like a monstrous lantern. The ice sculpture, shrouded in a tarp, stood sentinel. Ethan insisted on a walk-through. He moved through the empty tent, between the long tables draped in white linen, past the empty stage with its lonely microphone stand. He was rehearsing, I realized. His speech. He climbed the 2 steps to the stage, cleared his throat, and addressed the rows of imaginary, adoring guests. Thank you all for coming to celebrate not just a deal, or a promotion, but a principle. The principle that hard work, vision, and choosing the right allies, the right partners, is what separates true success from mere privilege. He was looking at a point in the middle distance, where Sophia would presumably be seated. His voice grew stronger, more pompous. We live in a world that often rewards connections over character, inheritance over ingenuity. But tonight is a testament to the opposite. It's proof that merit wins, that standing on your own 2 feet, with the right person beside you, is the only foundation that matters. He paused, a smug, triumphant smile playing on his lips. He was vilifying my world, why life, the very unseen support that had buoyed him, while sanctifying his betrayal. The hypocrisy was so colossal it was almost artistic. He didn't see me standing in the shadowed entrance of the tent, listening. He was too captivated by the sound of his own voice echoing in the empty space, practicing the narrative of his liberation from me. He finished, nodded in satisfaction, and stepped off the stage. He noticed me then, and for a second looked almost embarrassed before his face settled into its now familiar mask of impatient expectation. Well, he asked, what did you think? I met his gaze across the length of the empty dance floor. The storm clouds were massed behind my eyes, but my voice was a placid, dead calm. I think it's a powerful message, Ethan. I'm sure everyone will remember it. He smiled, taking it as the compliment it wasn't. Damn right they will. He walked out, heading to the house to take a call from Sophia. I stayed in the tent. I walked up to the stage, footsteps silent on the grass-carpeted floor. I didn't step onto it. I just looked at the microphone stand, a slim, silver sentinel. Soon I thought. The air was thick with the scent of forced flowers and impending rain. The gathering storm had reached the shore. All that was left was for it to break. The day of the party dawned with a cruel, pristine clarity. The sky over the Hamptons was a vault of cloudless blue, the sun glittering off the Atlantic like a shower of diamonds. It was the kind of day meant for lazy beach walks and iced tea on the porch, not for the execution I had planned. The house was a controlled frenzy. Caterers in stark, white uniforms moved with silent efficiency. Florists wired monstrous arrangements of orchids and lilies. A team was carefully constructing the 4-foot champagne tower on a central table, each glass placed with surgical precision. I moved through it all like a sleepwalker, but my mind was a vault, cold and focused. I had dressed early in the simple white silk dress, my hair in a low chignon, my grandmother's diamond studs, my only concession to glitter. I looked like the ghost of the woman Ethan had married, a subtle counterpoint to the garish spectacle his family had orchestrated. Catherine and Olivia arrived by 10, dressed for battle in matching shades of peacock blue silk. They descended like generals, clipboards in hand, their voices sharp as they issued orders. The ice sculpture is weeping already. Move it further into the shade. No, the scallops are to be passed after a foie gras. You imbecile! Where is the sommelier? I need to see the bottles, not the labels on the list. They ignored me completely. I was part of the scenery, now a slightly shabby heirloom. Ethan emerged near noon, resplendent in a new Tom Ford tuxedo, his hair freshly cut. He vibrated with a nervous, keyed-up energy. He did a walk-through, Catherine and Olivia trailing him, hanging on his every critique. Good, strong, powerful, he muttered, nodding at the seating chart, the stage, the tower of crystal. This says arrival. It does, darling, Catherine purred, adjusting his bow tie. You've earned this. His eyes swept the room and landed on me, hovering near the French doors. A frown flickered. Ellie, you're wearing that? I told you I would be, I said, quietly. He sighed, the long-suffering husband. Fine, just try to smile. And for God's sake, stay away from the Harringtons if you're just going to stand there like a wallflower. Let Sophia and me handle them. Of course, I murmured, lowering my gaze. Sophia arrived at 4, a statement in blood-red McQueen. The dress was all slashes and angles, aggressive and sexual. Her dark bob was flawless, her makeup a mask of perfect ambition. She didn't ring the bell. She swept in as if she owned the foyer, air-kissing Catherine and Olivia, her eyes finding Ethan with a possessive gleam. Darling, do you look incredible, she said, her voice carrying. She took his arm, her fingers curling around his bicep. Ready for your close-up? With you here, I'm ready for anything, he said, leaning down to kiss her cheek. The intimacy was brazen, performed for the staff, for his family, for the empty room. For me, her gaze finally slid to me, a slow, dismissive appraisal. Eloan, what a simple dress. Very you. She turned back to Ethan without waiting for a response. Now, the Mercers should be here by 6. Uncle Ben is eager to talk numbers once the festivities die down. I told him you'd have the final projections. They're in my study, Ethan said, beaming. You're a miracle worker, Sophia. Teamwork, she said, squeezing his arm. The guests began to arrive at 6. First came the Connecticut set, Catherine's friends and Ethan's lesser colleagues, their eyes wide as they took in the spectacle. The jazz trio began to play smooth, inoffensive standards. The air filled with the clink of glasses and the hum of conversation. Ethan, with Sophia permanently attached to his side, held court, his laugh too loud, his gestures expansive. I stood near the entrance to the tent, a silent greeter. Catherine brushed past me, her smile for the guests not reaching her eyes when she spoke to me under her breath. You see, this is how it's done. This is a hostess, not a piece of furniture. Try to learn something. She floated away to fawn over a senior, VP's wife. The real guests began to arrive at 6:30. I saw the change in the air before I saw them. A subtle shift, a deepening of the hum. A caterer paused, whispering to another. Then Jonathan Harrington and his wife Eleanor appeared at the tent entrance. He was in a beautifully cut but understated suit, she in a gown of pewter gray chiffon that whispered old money and quiet power. They didn't look like guests at a corporate party. They looked like royalty visiting a provincial outpost. Catherine, with the radar of a social climber, was there in an instant. Olivia on her heels. Mr. Harrington, Mrs. Harrington, we are so honored you could come. Ethan, look. Ethan disengaged from a group, dragging Sophia with him, a slightly desperate smile on his face. Sir, ma'am, welcome. This is, what an incredible surprise. Harrington shook his hand, his gaze cool and assessing. Ethan, quite the spread. His eyes moved past Ethan, past the beaming Catherine, past the preening Sophia, and found me, standing apart. He gently disengaged and walked towards me, Eleanor following. Eloin, why deared, he said, taking both my hands. His voice was warm, genuine. You look lovely. A bit pale. Everything all right? Just a headache, Jonathan, I said, forcing a small smile. The sea air will fix it. Thank you for coming. When Lucas called, I couldn't refuse, he said, his eyes boring into mine with a knowing look. He knew, not all of it, but enough. Your father is a lucky man to have such a devoted daughter. The word devoted held layers of meaning. Eleanor kissed my cheek. That dress is perfection. Varvatos, circa 2018? I remember it. Timeless. They had effectively created a bubble of significance around me, separating me from the circus. Ethan watched, his smile frozen, confusion and a dawning anxiety in his eyes. Sophia's triumphant expression had faltered. Before the tension could dissipate, more arrivals were announced. My parents, Richard and Eleanor Sterling, entered with Lucas. My mother was, as predicted, wearing a hat, a small, elegant fascinator that was indeed a weapon of subtlety and taste. My father's mere presence commanded a different kind of silence. This wasn't the boisterous energy of new money. It was the gravitational pull of established power. Catherine looked ready to faint with delirious joy. She scurried over, Ethan and Sophia in tow. Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Sterling, Lucas, welcome to our humble celebration. My father shook Ethan's hand, his grip firm, his expression unreadable. Ethan, congratulations on your achievements. His eyes flicked to Sophia, still glued to Ethan's side, and his lips thinned almost imperceptibly. Thank you, sir. It means a great deal that you're here. Ethan gushed, sweat beading on his temple. We're here for Eloin, Lucas said, his voice cutting through Ethan's fawning. He didn't even look at Ethan. His eyes were on me, a question in them. Are you ready? I gave a faint, almost invisible nod. Then came Benjamin Mercer, a bear of a man with a shrewd face, and his wife. Sophia broke away from Ethan, practically sprinting to her uncle's side. Uncle Ben, you made it. Sophia, he said, his voice a low rumble. He hugged her, but his eyes were already scanning the room, finding my father. He gave a short nod, which my father returned. A silent communication between kings, over the head of the pawn who thought she was a queen. The party split into two distinct galaxies. One orbited Ethan, Sophia, Catherine and Olivia, that a noisy, bright planet of ambition and perceived triumph. The other, more powerful and infinitely quieter, orbited the tense periphery. The Harringtons, the Sterlings, the Mercers, and a few other heavy hitters Lucas had invited. They spoke in low tones, occasionally casting glances at the main spectacle, to their expressions ranging from amusement to distaste. I floated between them, a ghost in white. I fetched a drink for Eleanor Harrington. I shared a quiet word with my mother, who squeezed my hand so tightly her knuckles went white. Soon, darling, she whispered, her voice fierce. The crisis point came during the first course. Catherine, emboldened by champagne and the apparent success of her son, decided to make her move. She led a bejeweled, older friend of hers, a Mrs. Driscoll, the same one from the previous dinner, over to where I stood momentarily alone near the champagne tower. Margaret, do you remember my daughter-in-law, Eloan? Catherine said, her voice saccharine and loud enough to draw ears from nearby conversations. Of course, Mrs. Driscoll said, her kind face sympathetic. We were just discussing how fortunate Eloan is. Catherine continued, patting my arm with false affection. To have married a man like Ethan, a self-made man, it allows her such freedom. No need to trouble herself with the rough and tumble of a career. She can focus on the home, on making things pretty. She gestured vaguely at the flowers. It's a dying art, really to be a dedicated homemaker. So few women have the luxury or the temperament for it anymore. Don't you agree, Margaret? Mrs. Driscoll looked acutely uncomfortable. Well, I. Catherine barreled on, her eyes hard on mine. It takes a special kind of grace, I think, that be the supportive partner, to stand back and let your husband shine, without needing the spotlight for yourself, to know your role. Not all women are so secure, so selfless. Her gaze flicked meaningfully towards Sophia, who was laughing uproariously at something Ethan had said, her hand on his chest. The message was clear. Sophia was the grasping career woman. I was the docile, soon-to-be-replaced placeholder. And in Catherine's warped view, she was paying me a compliment. A hush had fallen at our end of the tent. Jonathan Harrington had stopped speaking. My father's head was turned. Lucas's eyes were chips of blue ice. Ethan from across the room had heard. He stopped mid-laugh, his face draining of color. His eyes met mine. In them, I saw a frantic, silent plea. Don't you dare. Smile and take it. I held his gaze for a long, terrible second. I saw the man who had promised me the world, who had wept in this house, who now looked at me with fear and warning because his mother had insulted me. And I smiled. It wasn't the meek, defeated smile he expected. It was a slow, cold, terrifyingly serene curve of my lips that didn't reach my eyes. His face went slack with confusion, then dawning horror. I turned from him, back to Catherine and the mortified Mrs. Driscoll. I didn't speak. I simply let the smile linger, a silent, unsettling acknowledgement before I turned and walked away, towards the bar. I could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on my back. The pity, the curiosity, the stunned silence. I ordered a glass of ice water. My hand was steady. The moment had crystallized everything. The public humiliation was complete. The stage was set. The perfect party had reached its carefully orchestrated zenith of cruelty. From the corner of my eye, I saw Jonathan Harrington lean over and say something quietly to my father. My father nodded once, a grim finality in the gesture. Lucas caught my eye and tilted his head, fractionally, towards the small stage at the head of the tent. The microphone stand gleamed under the lights. Ethan, recovering, was being jostled by a few of his junior colleagues towards that same stage. It was time for his speech, his coronation. He climbed the steps, his face pale but set in a mask of determined triumph. He tapped the microphone. It emitted a deafening thump that silenced the last murmurs. Friends, colleagues, family, he began, his voice slightly too high. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight to celebrate. Well, celebrate the future. I took a slow sip of my water, the ice cubes clinking softly in the absolute quiet. I set the glass down on the bar with a precise, definitive click. The sound echoed in the hushed tent. It was time. A hushed, thick, and expectant fell over the tent. The only sounds were the distant shush of the ocean and the brittle tinkling of the champagne tower as a server nervously adjusted a glass. All eyes were on the stage, on Ethan, who stood blinking in the sudden spotlight, his prepared speech momentarily forgotten in the wake of his mother's venom and my unsettling smile. He cleared his throat at the microphone, picking up the dry, rasping sound. As I was saying, the future. My future at Barclays, and the future of the Mercer deal, which is so close I can taste it. He forced a laugh, seeking out Sophia in the crowd. She beamed back, a pillar of red confidence. None of this happens alone. It's about partnership. True partnership. The kind built on mutual respect, shared ambition, and his eyes, scanning the room for affirmation, landed on the stoic faces of Jonathan Harrington and why father, Benjamin Mercer. They weren't smiling. Their expressions were of polite, detached interest, the kind reserved for a mediocre play. His confidence faltered. And the support of those who believe in you, he finished lamely. It was my cue. I didn't rush. I set my water glass down with a final, quiet click that seemed to echo. My heels made no sound on the grass-carpeted floor as I walked the length of the tent. The crowd parted before me, a silent, fascinated sea. I felt 100 stares, but I saw only the path to the stage. Catherine's mouth was a tight, disapproving line. Olivia looked confused. Sophia's smile had frozen into a grimace of annoyance. Ethan watched me approach, his expression shifting from confusion to panic to a silent, furious warning. Get down, his eyes screamed. You're ruining it. I ignored him. I climbed the 2 steps to the stage. He tried to block me, a subtle shift of his body, but I sidestepped him with the grace of a dancer and stood before the microphone. I was a head shorter than him, but in that moment, I felt like I was looking down from a great height. I tapped the mic gently. The soft thump was a gunshot in the silence. I didn't smile. My face was a calm, pale mask. Thank you. Ethan, I said, my voice clear, calm, and amplified to fill every corner of the space. It wasn't the meek murmur he was used to. It was the voice of a sterling used to being heard. For that inspiring introduction to your future. A nervous titter ran through the Connecticut contingent, quickly dying. My husband is right. Tonight is about celebrating a future, and about partnership and support. I turned my head, to slightly include the entire room. He's worked so very hard. Late nights, missed dinners, immense pressure. I looked directly at Catherine. As his mother so eloquently reminded us earlier, it's a testament to his grit, his own grit. Catherine's chest puffed up with pride for a second before my tone registered. But you see, I continued, my voice dropping to a more conversational, yet piercing level. There's a funny thing about support. Sometimes the most crucial support is the kind you never see, the kind that comes from loving someone enough to clear the path, to open a door, to make sure the right people are watching. Ethan's hand shot out and gripped my wrist hard. The microphone picked up the rustle. His face was inches from mine, a furious, terrified whisper. Ellie, what the hell are you doing? Get off the stage. Now. I looked down at his hand on my wrist, then slowly, deliberately, pulled my arm free. The movement was gentle, but absolute. The entire tent saw it. I returned to the microphone. My name is Lowen Sterling, I said, and the name landed in the room with the weight of an anvil. A sharp intake of breath, from someone near the back. Before I was a Lowen, right. I was a Lowen Sterling, daughter of Richard Sterling, sister to Lucas Sterling. I gestured gracefully towards where my family stood, a united front of grim solidarity. Some of you know what that means. For those who don't, Sterling Global is a family investment office. We're diversely interested. I could see the connections firing behind the eyes of the Barclays people. The whispers started. Sterling. The Sterling. Oh my God. Ethan and I met when I was taking a break from being a Sterling. I just wanted to be a Lowen. He was handsome, driven, and he loved me for me. Or so I believed. I let a sliver of old pain show just for a second. I used my allowance .my trust fund. Tio built a beautiful life for us. This house. I gestured around. The apartment on 5th Avenue. I never lied about it. I just never emphasized it. I thought our love was the point, not the pedigree. Ethan was as white as the tablecloths. Ellie stopped this. He hissed, but his voice was too quiet, too strangled for the mic. But as Ethan's career progressed, a strange thing happened. The harder he worked, the more he began to resent the very life I'd provided. He started to see my comfort as idleness, my family's name as a shadow over his achievements. I looked at him, my gaze cool and analytical. He wanted a partner, you see, someone with a title, a business card, not a wife with a trust fund and a talent for making a home. That's not true. Ethan burst out, finally finding his voice. It was loud, desperate. Everyone, I'm sorry, she's not well. She's had a difficult time. A difficult time, I repeated, nodding as if considering it. Yes, it is difficult to watch the man you love fall in love with someone else. Someone like Sophia Bennett. I didn't shout. I simply turned and looked directly at her, a scarlet stain against the white tent. Sophia's triumphant mask shattered into open-mouthed shock. How dare you? She spat, taking a step forward. How dare I? I echoed. How dare I mention the woman who has been sleeping with my husband for the past 4 months? The woman who helped him pick out the diamond studs she's wearing tonight, charged to a secret credit card? I reached into the small, hidden pocket of my dress and pulled out a single, printed photograph. I held it up. It was one of Vance's clearest. Ethan and Sophia kissing in the parking garage, his hand to her hair. I turned it slowly so the guests at the front could see. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Lies, Ethan roared. Photoshopped lies. She's insane. I hired a detective, Ethan. Roland Vance. He's here tonight, in fact. I gave a small nod towards the back of the tent, where a nondescript man in a dark suit gave a slight, professional nod. He has hundreds of these. Time-stamped. Hotel receipts. Restaurant bills. And audio recordings. Of you. And of your mother, Catherine, discussing how a divorce from your vapid socialite of a wife would free you up for a real partner, like Sophia. Catherine made a sound like a stepped-on mouse and clutched at Olivia. The color drained from her face, leaving her garish makeup stark and terrible. But the affair, while personally devastating, perhaps the least interesting part of this partnership. I continued, if discussing a mildly curious business deal. The more fascinating support has been professional. You see Ethan's big break, the Kensington Pharmaceuticals portfolio that put him on the map? I paused letting the suspense build. That came about after I mentioned to my brother Lucas over lunch that my poor husband was having a rough time at work. Lucas, who sits on 3 boards with Jonathan Harrington, simply mentioned Ethan's name, opened a door. I looked at Harrington. He gave a slow, grave nod, confirming it without saying a word. The damning truth of it was in his silent acknowledgement. Ethan looked like he'd been gut-punched. He swayed on his feet. No, that's Harrington, sir. That's not. And the Mercer deal? I pressed on my voice like a scalpel. The one you're celebrating tonight? The one Sophia was supposedly delivering through her dear Uncle Ben? I turned my gaze to Benjamin Mercer, who stood with his arms crossed, his face a thundercloud. Mr. Mercer, did I.S. the Mercer biotech deal with Barclays proceeding? All eyes swung to the bulky, powerful man. He cleared his throat. It is not, he boomed, his voice, not needing a microphone. The board voted to suspend negotiations indefinitely yesterday. Regulatory concerns. He glared at his niece. Concerns that were raised weeks ago. Sophia. Concerns you assured me were being handled. You were too busy handling other things, it seems. Sophia looked as if she'd been slapped. Uncle Ben, don't. He cut her off, his voice final. And your partnership review. Ethan? I said, turning back to him. He was crumbling before me, his tuxedo suddenly seeming like a ridiculous costume. The one you thought was a done deal? I'm afraid that might be on hold as well, pending a review of judgment, professional and personal. I glanced at Harrington, who gave another slight, confirming nod. The floor had fallen out from his world. His career, his deal, his mistress, his reputation, all evaporating under the bright lights of the tent he'd rented for his triumph. You bitch, he whispered, the words are raw. Broken thing, but the microphone caught them. You vicious, spiteful bitch. You've been planning this. You've ruined me. I didn't ruin you. Ethan, I said, and for the first time, a flicker of genuine emotion. Pity, perhaps, crossed my face. You did that all by yourself. I just handed you the tools. My family's money, my family's connections, my silence, and you used them to build a pedestal from which you could look down on me. All I did was remind you who poured the foundation. I reached down and picked up a thin, elegant folder I'd placed at the side of the stage before the party began. I held it up. This is a divorce petition, filed in New York State Supreme Court. My attorney, Marcus Locke, is also here tonight. Another man, with the calm demeanor of a shark, nodded from beside my father. Given the irrefutable evidence of adultery, and the prenuptial agreement's morality clause, you will be receiving the settlement as outlined. Nothing for me, nothing for my family. The apartment, the house, the cars, mine. The joint investment property will be bought out at its 2024 value. You will receive no spousal support. I stepped closer to him, lowering my voice, so only he and the microphone could hear the final, icy dagger. You wanted to stand on your own 2 feet, Ethan? Congratulations. Now you get to. I placed the folder carefully on the podium. Then I turned, stepped off the stage, and began to walk. I didn't look at the stunned, gaping faces of his colleagues. I didn't look at the ashen ruins of Catherine and Olivia. I didn't look at Sophia, who is now arguing in a frantic, hushed shriek with her stony-faced uncle. I walked towards the entrance of the tent, towards the clean, salt-tinged night air. My family fell into step beside me, why father on my right, Lucas on my left at why mother behind me, protective phalanx. As I passed Jonathan Harrington, he reached out and gently touched my shoulder. Eloin, he said, his voice low. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. And you have my word, his career at Barclays is over. I nodded. Thank you, Jonathan. We exited the tent. The noise erupted behind us, a cacophony of shocked exclamations, raised voices, the beginning of a scandalized roar. But it was muffled, distant, like the sound of a storm from inside a safe, strong house. Lucas's driver had the car ready at the front. I paused before getting in, taking one last look at the glowing white tent, a blister of light and misery on the dark lawn. My father put a hand on my back. Come on, Ellie. It's over. I slid into the quiet, leather-scented interior of the car. As it pulled away, I saw Ethan stumble out of the tent entrance, his bow tie undone, his hair wild, shouting something into the night that was lost in the wind and the sound of the engine. He looked small, insignificant, I didn't feel elation. I didn't feel vengeance. I felt a vast, hollow, clean exhaustion. And beneath it, like the first green shoot after a fire, a sense of something new. Something that belonged only to me. The gilded cage was gone. I had melted it down myself. I in public, and walked out of the wreckage. The silence in the town car was profound, a vacuum after the explosive cacophony of the tent. I stared out the window at the dark, the rushing trees of the Montauk Highway, while reflection, a pale ghost superimposed over them. My hands lay perfectly still in my lap. There was no tremor, no tears, just a vast, echoing hollow where my marriage had been. Lucas was the first to speak, his voice cutting through the quiet with surgical precision. Marcus Locke will serve him at his office at 9 a.m. Monday. The temporary restraining order and asset freeze will be in effect simultaneously. He won't be able to access a single joint account, and he'll be barred from both residences. Security at the Fifth Avenue building and the Hamptons house has been notified. His keycards are deactivated. My father, from the seat opposite, let out a long, slow breath. It wasn't a sigh of relief, but of settled judgment. Harrington will have his resignation on his desk by noon. The word will be misconduct and gross error of judgment. It will be a kindness compared to the truth getting out in the financial press, which it inevitably will. Roland Vance's photographs have already been securely transmitted to a few select gossip columnists. The narrative will be clear. The ungrateful social climber to the betrayed heiress. I finally turned from the window. And the Mercer deal? Dead and buried, Lucas confirmed. Benjamin Mercer called me 5 minutes ago, from his car. He was apoplectic, not at the deal falling through, but at his niece's unprofessional and morally repugnant conduct. As he put it, she is as of now, unemployed and disinherited from any meaningful role in the family business. He sends his personal apologies to you, by the way, said he was blinded by familial loyalty. A sliver of cold satisfaction cut through the numbness. And Catherine, Olivia, my mother, seated beside my father, spoke for the first time to her voice like chilled steel. They are irrelevant. They will return to their meticulously decorated prison in Connecticut and will spend the rest of their lives trying to explain tonight away. They will not be received in any home that matters. That is a punishment far worse than any lawsuit. The car glided to a stop in front of our my Fifth Avenue apartment. The doorman, Paolo, was already holding the door, his face a careful professional mask. But his eyes met mine, and in them, I saw a flicker of something that looked like fierce approval. The staff knew. They always knew. You'll stay with us tonight. Of course. Why, mother, said touching my arm. I shook my head. No, I need to be here, in my home, alone. I saw the protest forming on her lips and stopped it. I'm not the woman who left here this afternoon, mother. I won't break. I just need to reacquaint myself with the walls. Lucas studied me, then nodded. Call if you need anything. Anything at all. We'll be here at 8 a.m. to go over the final paperwork with Locke. I entered the silent, gleaming apartment. It felt different. The air was cooler, the space larger. It was no longer a shared habitat, compromised by another's taste and resentment. It was mine, entirely. I walked to the bar, poured 2 fingers of a peaty scotch I'd always loved and Ethan had hated, and took it to the vast window overlooking the park. I didn't drink it. I just held the cool glass, watching the tiny lights of the city, and let the quiet settle into my bones. The storm broke at 2:17 a.m. My private cell phone, known only to family and a few close friends, buzzed and vibrated across the glass coffee table. Ethan. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again and again. On the 12th call, I picked up. I said nothing. His voice was a ragged, hysterical sob, stripped of all its polished banker's confidence. Ellie, Jesus Christ, you have to talk to me. You have to call them off. Harrington's assistant just called me a call on a Saturday night, telling me not to come in on Monday. My accounts are frozen. The doorman won't let me into my own goddamn building. What did you do? I took a slow breath. I did nothing, Ethan. I simply stopped doing everything. What does that mean? He screamed. I could hear wind, traffic. He was outside, probably on a street corner. You destroyed me. In front of everyone. My career is over. Sophia's uncle fired her. My mother is having heart palpitations. Are you happy now, you crazy bitch? No, I said, my voice flat. I'm not happy. I'm free. There's a difference. We can fix this. The panic shifted into desperate, wheedling persuasion. Baby, listen to me. I was wrong. I was so wrong. She meant nothing. It was the pressure to the ambition, it went to my head. But it's you I love. It's always been you. We can go to therapy. We can move away. Just call Harrington. Call your father. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. A lover's quarrel gone too far. You can fix this. You have the power. There it was. The final, grotesque reveal. Even now did I end his utter ruin. He saw me not as a person he'd wronged, but as a conduit to power he needed to manipulate. I do have the power, Ethan, I agreed, quietly. And I'm using it to never have to listen to your voice again after this phone call. The divorce will proceed as outlined. Any communication goes through Marcus Locke. If you attempt to contact me, myfamily. Or come within 500 feet of any of my properties, the restraining order becomes permanent, and I will release every photograph, every audio recording. To the Wall Street Journal and page 6. Do you understand? A long, strangled silence. Then, a broken whisper. You're a monster. No, I corrected, finally taking a sip of the scotch. It burned, clean and honest. I was your silent benefactor. Now, I'm your ghost. Goodbye, Ethan. I ended the call. I blocked the number. I finished my drink in the serene, reclaimed silence of my home. The following months were a study in efficient, merciless disentanglement. The legal process, shepherded by the pitiless genius of Marcus Locke, was a swift and public evisceration. Ethan, with no income, his reputation in tatters, and facing legal fees he couldn't afford, folded quickly. He signed the divorce papers in a sterile conference room, getting only the $5 million from the prenup. The morality clause was enforced, stripping the spousal support, and a buyout of the joint apartment at the depressed price. The media dubbed it the Sterling Sanction. I was painted variously as a tragic heroine or a cold-blooded avenger. I preferred the latter. I sold the Fifth Avenue apartment. It was tainted. With the proceeds and a significant chunk of my own capital, I founded the Sterling Arc Foundation that focused on providing microloans and business education for single mothers and women leaving abusive relationships. I didn't just put my name on it. I chaired the board. I met the applicants. I learned about spreadsheets, impact metrics, and grant proposals. For the first time in my life, the work was difficult, frustrating, and utterly fulfilling. Lucas, seeing my engagement, quietly shifted a small, manageable portfolio of Sterling Global's charitable investments under the foundation's umbrella. Think of it as practiced, he said, a rare, genuine smile on his face. With training wheels. One afternoon, about 6 months after the party, I was in my new, sun-filled office in Tribeca, reviewing architectural plans for the foundation's first community center, when my assistant buzzed. Ms. Sterling, there's a Mr. Jonathan Harrington here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment. I was surprised. Send him in, please. Harrington looked older, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. He declined coffee, sitting across from me with a thoughtful expression. This is a good space, he said. Purposeful. Thank you, Jonathan. To what do I owe the pleasure? 2 things, he said, steepling his fingers. First, an update. Ethan Wright is working as a junior analyst for a third-tier hedge fund in New Jersey. He lives in a rental in Weehawken. He is by all accounts miserable and universally known as a pariah. The circumstances of his departure are legendary in certain circles. I felt nothing, not even a flicker. And the second thing, a proposition, he said, leaning forward. Barclays is overhauling its philanthropy division. It's a mess, bloated, inefficient, more about photo ops than impact. We need someone to come in, tear it down, and rebuild it with intelligence, clout, and a genuine understanding of how money can actually affect change. Someone who can't be intimidated by the board, who has a name that opens doors, and who has recently demonstrated a formidable capacity for ruthless restructuring. He allowed a small, dry smile. The board thinks you'd be perfect. So do I. The title would be Head of Global Philanthropy. You'd report directly to me. I sat back in my chair, the leather cool against my skin. It was a real job, a powerful job, not a hobby, not a vanity project. A seat at the table in one of the world's most formidable financial institutions earned not by my name alone, but by the calculated public display of strength that name had enacted. You're not offering this to me because you feel guilty, or as a favor to my father, I stated. God, no, Harrington snorted. I'm offering it to you because I watched you orchestrate the most elegant, brutal corporate and personal takedown I've seen in 40 years on Wall Street. You identified the pressure points, you marshaled your resources with patience, and you executed with flawless, devastating timing. I have a division that needs that exact skill set. The fact that it comes with a sterling network and a compelling personal narrative is just a bonus. I looked out my window at the bustling streets of Tribeca, a world away from the gilded cages and silent suffering of my old life. I thought of the women my foundation was trying to help, who had no trust funds, and powerful brothers who had to build their security from nothing. I'm interested, I said, turning back to him, but on two conditions. One, that I have full autonomy to hire, fire, and restructure as I see fit for the first 18 months. No board committees, second-guessing every grant to a homeless shelter. And two, that the Sterling Arc Foundation becomes a strategic partner, not a competitor. We pilot programs. You scale them. Harrington's smile widened. It was the smile of a man who'd just closed a deal. I'd expect nothing less. Welcome aboard, Eloan. After he left, I stood at the window for a long time. The ghost of the woman I had been, the apologetic heiress, the decorative wife, was gone. Finally, laid to rest in the Hamptons tent. In her place was someone who had walked through fire of her own making and emerged, not unscarred, but tempered, stronger. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. Lucas, heard you had a visitor from Barclays. Should I send a fruit basket to his new overlord? Me? Don't bother. I think I'm going to be too busy. Lucas, proud of you, Ellie. I smiled a real, uncomplicated smile. I was proud of me, too. That evening, I met an old friend, a gallery owner named Chloe, for drinks at a noisy, vibrant new restaurant in the village. No one looked at me with pity. A few with curiosity. One or two with recognition and a respectful nod. I was just another woman in the city, talking and laughing. The weight of a secret life and a silenced heart finally lifted. As I walked home alone later, the city lights sparkling around me, I felt a sense of possession I never had before. I own my name now. I own my past. And for the first time I truly own my future. It was not a gift, not an inheritance. It was a conquest. And the story of the silent benefactor was over. The story of Eloan Sterling had just begun.